You need to be especially alert when you're on or around them. Barges, on the other hand, present a safety concern because they are not very maneuverable. Ranging up to a quarter-mile long, barge tows are difficult to steer, hard to stop, and have a dangerous blind spot in front. What happens if you encounter one of these? Are you going to cross your path? No way. Large vessels are less maneuverable than small craft and can take a mile to come to a stop, so stay out of their way. No matter where you're boating, the most dangerous time to be out is at dusk and after dark. Did you know that the major cause of accidents after dark is the lack of proper lighting? So if you're boating at night, make sure all of your required lights are working. Now let's look at some of the most common night navigational lights for the recreational boater. Side lights are red and green. Red on the port or left side, green on the starboard or right side. The stern light is a white light at the rear of the boat. The masthead light is a white light that shines forward and to both sides. It's located on the mast of a sailboat or on the top of a large powerboat. The all-round white light is a white light that can be seen by other boats from any direction. It's also sometimes called an anchor light. Most recreational powerboats have side lights and an all-round white light. This satisfies the law for powerboats less than 39 feet long. Knowing where lights are located is important. They'll tell you which way a boat is headed in the dark. Sometimes they'll show you what kind of vessel it is. Now let's head back out on the lake and test what you've learned. Okay, a boat's approaching ahead. We see green and white lights. What do? Green and white lights are the starboard and stern lights. That tells you a boat's headed across your path from your port side. So you're the stand-on vessel and should maintain course and speed. But you still need to be alert in case the other operator doesn't see you or know the rules of the road. Now we're approaching a single white light. Do you stand on or give way? Remember, the white light is the stern light. That means you're overtaking a boat, either moving or anchored, and it's the stand-on vessel. You can go around it on either side. Red and white lights ahead this time. What do? Since the red light is the port light, you know a boat's headed across your path on your starboard side. You're the give-way vessel. Now we're coming up on a single red light. What does that indicate, and what do? If you see only a red or green light, it means it's a sailboat, and you know that you always give way to a sailboat. These are some of the more common traffic situations that boaters encounter. You can find rules for other scenarios in the U.S. Coast Guard's publication, Navigation Rules. Now let's look at some navigation aids. Buoys and markers are the traffic signs of the waterways. These navigation aids also identify dangerous or restricted areas. They give directions and information. On the water, you'll encounter two types of marking systems. Regulatory markers tell you how to behave. They're enforced by law. Lateral markers mark safe water areas. Regulatory markers use simple shapes to help you understand their meaning, even from a distance. A diamond shape with a cross means keep out. You'll see these around areas where boats are not allowed, such as swimming areas or industrial sites. A circle marks a controlled area, such as a no-wake zone. An open diamond means danger, such as a shallow area, rocks or stumps. Lateral markers are special channel buoys. They define the lateral system of navigation on inland waterways. Red right returning is a phrase used in this situation. It means the red markers, whether they are buoys or lights, will always be on your right when you return to port or head upstream. If you're traveling downstream or leaving port, green will be on your right. The Intracoastal Waterway, or ICW, is a chain of local channels linked together to provide an inland passage on the Gulf and Atlantic coasts. Channels that are a part of the ICW are identified by yellow symbols on channel buoys and markers. If you're following the ICW clockwise from New Jersey, any marker displaying a yellow triangle should be passed by keeping it on the starboard or right side of the boat. Any marker displaying a yellow square should be passed by keeping it on the port or left side of the boat. One thing to remember about all marker buoys, you can't assume that their placement is 100% accurate. Currents and damage from watercraft can move buoys, so proceed with caution. Let's say that you've been cruising a while and you decide to stop and fish, or swim, or just relax. The ideal place is a well-protected area with plenty of room, adequate depth, and a sandy or muddy bottom. Start by heading slowly into the wind or current to a position upwind or up current of where you actually want to be. Then stop the boat and lower the anchor over the bow to the bottom. Next, slowly back away downwind or down current, letting out about 7 to 10 times as much line as the depth of the water, depending on the wind and wave size. Then secure the line to a bow cleat and pull on the anchor line to make sure the anchor's set. Never anchor from the stern because it can cause the boat to swamp. The bow is designed to ride through waves. The stern isn't. To retrieve the anchor, move the boat directly over the anchor while pulling in the line. Now you know why boating isn't as simple as it looks. It takes a fair amount of knowledge to be a good skipper, even just for pleasure boating. And if you operate a personal watercraft, there are a few more things that you need to keep in mind. Personal watercraft offer a unique and exciting boating experience, but they also present some special challenges to their operators. Accidents can happen because personal watercraft are so fast and maneuverable. It's easy to get in harm's way if you're not paying attention, or if you don't understand how a personal watercraft works. Let's look at how a personal watercraft operates. Water is drawn into the pump housing where an impeller pressurizes the water and forces it out a nozzle at the rear of the craft, pushing the vessel forward. Stay clear of the steering nozzle when it's operating. Its high-velocity water jet can cause severe internal injuries. For this reason, anyone riding a personal watercraft should wear a wetsuit or other clothing that provides similar protection. On all personal watercraft, the nozzle is also the steering mechanism. You steer by changing the direction of the nozzle. And on this type of vessel, you need power to steer. If you allow the engine to return to idle or shut off while you're in the process of maneuvering, you will lose all steering control. You'll just keep going in the direction you were headed before you lost power. Because you know you can take a spill, there are 3 critical pieces of safety equipment. First, a life jacket or personal flotation device is absolutely essential when you're on a personal watercraft. Most riders favor a Type 3 jacket because it's the least restrictive. Second is your ignition safety switch. All personal watercraft now come equipped with this. You attach yourself to the safety switch with a lanyard. If the lanyard is yanked from the switch, the engine will shut off. And whenever you leave the operator's position, detach the lanyard from the switch so that no one else can start your vessel. This safety device is so critical that it's illegal to ride a personal watercraft without it. The third piece of safety equipment that riders need is a wetsuit or similar protective clothing. Sometimes after a fall, the personal watercraft is completely overturned. When this happens, follow the instructions on the decal at the rear of the craft. The decal shows the direction to roll it to an upright position. Sooner or later, you'll have to board the craft from the water. It's a good idea to practice reboarding with someone else around to see if you can do it alone. And finally, make sure that any child you take with you is big enough to ride safely. Your passenger should be able to securely hold on to you or to the handholds while keeping both feet firmly on the footrest. Never seat a passenger in front of you. Now let's take a look at some rules regarding responsible and courteous operation. Some people have such a good time on their personal watercraft that they don't realize they might be getting on other people's nerves. A common complaint about personal watercraft is irresponsible behavior. In some places, it's gotten so bad that laws have been passed to limit personal watercraft use. So the best way to ensure that you have a place to ride is to do your part to minimize the nuisance factor. Hot dogging is dangerous as well as annoying. Jumping the wake of a passing boat or riding too close to another boat creates special risks. It's restricted and even prohibited in some states. One danger with wake jumping is visibility. The boat making the wake may block your view of oncoming traffic, and at the same time, make you invisible to them. Because personal watercraft moves so fast, operators need to constantly watch out for other vessels or objects in the water. It's also stressful for boat operators to have personal watercraft constantly running close to their boats. Vary your location. Riding around in one small area will eventually irritate people nearby, so keep moving around and avoid congregating with other personal watercraft. Keep your distance from camping or residential areas, especially in the early morning hours. Avoid maneuvers that lift the noisy engine exhaust out of the water, and don't modify your engine exhaust system if it creates more noise. Remember that you need a minimum depth of 2.5 feet to safely operate your craft. When you get into water that's too shallow, debris can get caught in your water intake, damaging your engine as well as the environment. And speaking of the environment, be aware that high-speed operation in very shallow water or near the shore can cause erosion. Many personal watercraft accidents are caused by inexperienced operators. So before you allow anyone to operate your craft, let them know that they're operating a boat and have the same responsibilities as any other boat operator. Your attitude towards safe operation will influence their behavior. Check that they meet the minimum age and education requirements for personal watercraft operation in your state. Make sure they know basic boating safety information and navigation rules. While still on shore, show them the basic operating procedures, including starting and reboarding, and remind them that power is required for steering control. It's also a good idea to let beginning riders start out where there's little traffic. They may concentrate on riding instead of the surrounding traffic in the area. Emphasize the need for being alert. If you take care of these basic responsibilities, you'll ensure safe and enjoyable use of your personal watercraft. These are just the basic rules for operating your personal watercraft and sharing it with others. Study your manual for the regulations specific to your state. Next, we'll look at the legal requirements for boating. Over the years, the federal government has developed a number of legal requirements to ensure safe boating. In addition, each state has its own set of rules and regulations. To make sure you comply with all the laws in your state, it's best to consult your manual. But right now, let's look at some basic requirements that apply across the country. Wherever you live, you'll need to register your boat. You need a certificate of number, also called a boat registration, and a validation decal to legally operate your boat on public waters. Common sense tells you that negligent and reckless behavior on the water is neither courteous nor prudent. It's also illegal. Often, the first law that people break before committing negligent or reckless acts is consuming alcohol while operating a boat. Alcohol impairs vision, alertness, and reaction time. It impairs your judgment, and it's particularly deadly out on the water. One alcoholic drink while boating can have the same effect as 3 on land. Alcohol is a contributing factor in many boating accidents, including about 1/3 of all fatalities. So be sure to designate a boat operator if your group consumes alcohol on the water. Let's look at some examples of illegal operation. Boating in restricted areas that have been clearly marked by buoys or signs. Letting passengers ride on the bow, gunwale, transom, seatbacks, or anywhere else there's a chance they may fall overboard. Operating at speeds that aren't reasonable and prudent based on boating traffic and other conditions. And causing personal injury or property damage with a boat wake in posted no-wake areas. The law also tells you to reduce speed when you approach a swimming area, a shoreline, or a boat where people are fishing, water skiing, diving, or anchored. And always stay clear of diver down flags. You'll also need to remember it's illegal to anchor your boat in the traveled portion of a river or channel, where it will interfere with passing boats. And finally, it's illegal to attach a boat to a buoy, beacon, light, or any other navigation aid unless it's designated as a mooring buoy. And of course, it's illegal to move navigation aids or tamper with them in any way. In a post-9/11 world, there's a real threat to some of our nation's waterfront facilities. In many cases, safety zones or exclusionary zones have been established around power plants, locks, dams, and critical port facilities. As a responsible boater, it's your duty to respect these safety zones and obey the orders of security patrols. Avoid commercial port operation areas, especially those that involve military, cruise line, or petroleum facilities. When you're on open water, stay clear of U.S. naval vessels. Don't approach within 100 yards and slow to minimum speed within 500 yards of any military ship. Don't anchor beneath bridges or in the channel, and keep a sharp eye out for anything that looks peculiar or out of the ordinary. Report all activities that seem suspicious. In an emergency, call 911. The Coast Guard's America's Waterway Watch also maintains a 24-hour hotline, 1-877-249-2824. Now let's look at the equipment that you're required to have on board. One piece of equipment that every boater must carry is a life jacket. More specifically, a U.S. Coast Guard approved personal flotation device, or PFD. This is the most important piece of equipment on your boat, and here's why. Approximately 70% of all boating fatalities are drownings, and 9 out of 10 drowning victims were not wearing a life jacket. That's why you're legally required to have a PFD for each person on board. There are several types to choose from. Where you're boating and what you're doing determines which one you choose. For instance, this is a Type 1 PFD. It's an offshore or seagoing vest. It'll keep your head up when you're unconscious, even in rough water. Type 2 vests are designed for calmer inland water, like lakes. However, they may not turn you face up if you're unconscious. PFDs are mandatory for people being towed by a boat. PFDs are also mandatory for anyone operating a personal watercraft. You'll see a lot of them wearing one of these Type 3 vests. Type 3 vests are also preferred by fishermen because they allow freedom of movement. But be aware that a Type 3 will not turn you face up in the water. Some people say they don't wear their PFDs because they're too hot or too bulky, but that's not an excuse anymore with this inflatable Type 3 PFD. You put it on just like any other life vest, but it doesn't inflate until you pull this cord. Because you do have to pull the cord, this type of PFD is not a good choice for activities where there's even a small chance of being knocked unconscious. Activities like riding a personal watercraft or wakeboarding. However, there are versions of this vest that will inflate automatically if you fall into the water. Just remember that children should not use inflatable PFDs. The U.S. Coast Guard has approved